not going to have one of those moments. But a few Sundays ago, I brought up about my boys giving me a hard time about being forgetful and stuff, and I'm getting old and all that stuff. And so Charles right there asked me how old I was. Well, how old are you? I think he's trying to get my mind off my lesson. You got that thing too, didn't you? Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning. I don't know if I've already told y'all this in the comments, but at work, my guys, they like to give me a little bit of a hard time because, if you can't have fun at work, you give folks a hard time working, you have fun. But on my wall, facing me, there's got a couple pictures of some squirrels. One of them's an albino squirrel. That's for special moments. But they put some squirrels on my wall because they seem to think that I see squirrels at work. Sometimes I might get a little distracted. And now the story of that is, it's not that I see squirrels. It's not that I get distracted. It's just where they have one or two things to worry about, I have like 50, 60, 70, 100. I try to explain that to them, but they keep putting squirrels on my wall. But anyhow, I bring that up to say, when I was starting to study for this lesson, I was like, there's some, rabbit trails, we'll call them. We'll lay off the squirrels. I've said before, there's some things that this author comes out with that are outstanding, and there's some things that make me really scratch my head. And his introduction to today's class, or today's lesson, I did start scratching my head. Where is this guy coming from? If y'all read the introduction, he talks about folks that send money to Israel, and it's not just the Jewish folks that send money to Israel, but it's people that they can be atheists or premillennialists, and I got to think, well, you know what? Let's just touch a little bit of base, even though I don't really understand how it makes sense with today's lesson. But premillennialism. Anyone got an idea what that is or what it's about?
Christ coming before 1,000 years.
Something like that, yes. A lot, and what I guess his point that he was trying to make was, there's a lot of folks that think that Israel is going to play a key role in Christ coming, and then there's going to be the 1,000 years and all that stuff. And his point was that's why he thinks folks give money to Israel. And my whole thing is, and if you watch TV, you see the commercials. Oh, there's poor folks in Israel. There's poor folks here in the United States. There's poor folks where I've been everywhere. And there's folks with money too. So I'm not sure where he went. But as far as premillennialism goes, there is, I think, a conflict with premillennialism in the New Testament. And I just want folks to be aware, because it's still alive today. Now, we're probably not going to hear about it because we're not going to live to 2999. We're not going to be here for that. But the big hoopla of 1999, before we went to year 2000, the world was coming to an end, Christ was coming back, people sold all their stuff and they were just waiting. That happened. And a lot of people really believe in that stuff. Now, the only thing I was worried about was, is my money in my bank going to disappear when the clock turns to 2000? That was really my only worry. But my pop, he said, hey, don't worry about it. He's a computer guy, worked around him forever. He said, don't worry about it. So I didn't. But premillennialism, the conflict that it has with the New Testament is, when Christ comes again, things aren't going to change a whole lot. We're still going to continue with the physical earth here for 1,000 years. Folks are going to die. People are going to be born. And you basically, you got 1,000 years to get it right. Because when Christ comes back for the second coming, that's when it goes down. The Bible doesn't teach that. So I just, again, little rabbit trail this morning with his introduction because I wasn't quite sure where he was coming from. But just be aware, when you do hear folks talk about premillennialism, ask them the question. Because I've asked the question. The New Testament talks about a second coming. And Christ is going to come. But there's not going to be a second coming. And when he does come, that is it. We're not going to have 1,000 more years of us getting it, of humankind getting it right. So, again, just wanted to throw that out there. Again, I'm not sure where the author was coming from on that, and unless someone's got some insight for me as far as how it goes into today's lesson, I'm not quite sure. But anyhow, today's lesson, Romans chapter 11, I want to read verses 1 through 4. I say then, God has not rejected his people, has he? May it never be. For I too am an Israelite, a descendant of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin. God has not rejected his people whom he foreknew. Or do you not know what the scripture says in the passage about Elijah, how he pleads with God against Israel? Lord, they have killed thy prophets, they have torn down thy altars, and I alone am left, and they are seeking my life. But what is the divine response to him? I have kept for myself 7,000 men who have not bowed the knee to Baal. And this, the bottom line is Paul's trying to tell, again, his audience is Jewish and Gentiles. And he's letting he's letting the Jews know God hadn't abandoned you. Throughout the book of Romans, Paul's addressed the Jewish folks and kind of got onto them a little bit. And he turns and he talks to the Gentiles and gets onto them a little bit. But the one message that he's been teaching throughout this book is God's grace is for all, and all can become children of God. And that's the key that Paul's trying to get across. You don't get any extra bonus points for being Jewish. You don't get any extra points for being Gentile. We're all on the same playing field. And I think I've said before, Christ crucified and being raised from the dead for the remission of sin was the ultimate equalizer for everything. We are all on the same thing. It doesn't matter if you're Roman, it doesn't matter if you're American, it doesn't matter if you're wherever. It doesn't matter. We are all saved by grace through obedient faith because God's gift of grace is for all. And that message hasn't stopped. But the one thing that I found a little interesting was this first section. He calls, when he addresses when he talks about Elijah, the last paragraph, he calls it the Elijah complex, where Elijah was kind of I don't know, I think he didn't say he was whining. But the bottom line, it was, he kind of perceived this as Elijah was maybe complaining a little bit. Hey, I'm the only one left. They're after me. I'm wore out, and it's just not worth it. And I'm tired. Whether he was whining or not, whether there was an Elijah complex or not, it did make me think about something else. And maybe he was a little frustrated, maybe feeling a little bit sorry for himself. And that's one of the things that I would like to talk about today as it relates to Elijah, and maybe he was feeling a little sorry for himself. I've mentioned also before, in the military, it just seems like, Dr. Phil stamped on my forehead because people want to talk to me about stuff. And I still don't understand it. But I've talked with a lot of people about a lot of things. A lot of folks I've talked to, during a deployment, after a deployment, and sometimes well after a deployment. And this is not going to be a class on PTSD or anything like But what I do want to talk about, and what I talk most about with people, is what I call self-pity. I've mentioned it in a lesson a while back, that there's folks in life that need a crutch so that they have an excuse for how their life is. I'm not saying that applies to everybody, because some people have some issues in life that are kicking their butt, and they do need help. But there are folks out there that wallow in self-pity, that want to have a problem so that they have an excuse for their life not being what it could be or what it should be. So, what does self-pity do to somebody? Well, it drains your friends because you're always, the Debbie Downer, the raining on everyone's parade. It's hard to be around folks like that. You always walk around with a negative attitude. Folks don't have a whole lot of pity for you anymore because you have so much for yourself. And something else, and this is, I think the key is, you're the victim. You're always the victim. And by being a victim, you're going to have hopelessness. It's going to be hard to interact with folks. You're preoccupied with the past, and you're going to let your past basically define your future. You always have a negative outlook and a restrictive way of thinking. Your perception's narrow, and you basically kind of feel like you're helpless, you're defeated, and you're vulnerable. And why am I talking about all this? Well, I don't know if Elijah felt that way or not. And give me a second. I don't know if Elijah felt that way or not, but there's a lot of people today that wallow in self-pity. I'll say this, though. There's a lot of people that don't, but we've had our moment in time where life's gotten us and we're struggling. I've been there, and I think, being honest with yourself, if you've lived long enough, not that long though, Charles, but if you've lived long enough, life's gotten you. It's kicked you down. It's knocked you down. And the reality is, life can be hard and life can be cruel. And I think that the one thing that we can learn, or the point that I want to make from all this is, there's a way out of that. God's given us a way out of that. With everything that you have in life, with everything that can go wrong, what God has to offer is greater. And it's offered, as Paul has pointed out over and over again, it's offered to everybody. You have a comment?
Actually, this is a good time to have it, because I was going to say the most important thing that self-pity dragged us away from is our encounter with Christ was the answer. It dragged us away from it.
And that's my point. Christ is the answer. I've mentioned it before. I'm a pretty self-confident guy. I feel like I am mentally strong, and I can handle whatever life throws at me. And I found out throughout life I can't by myself handle everything that life has thrown at me. There are some things that are bigger than me. There's some things that I emotionally, mentally wasn't prepared to handle. And Christ is the answer. Now this is a little bit scroll straight across. When I was my first deployment, they train you up for not everything, but they train you up for what you're supposed to encounter. And one day, I was a battle captain, sitting at the top, radios, maps, all that stuff and everything. And the intel officer, her and I worked together quite a bit, kind of close. So I mean, we knew each other pretty good. When she opened the door to talk, just the look on her face was enough. Something was going on. And something was going on. Pre lieutenant next door, second lieutenant, kind of lost it. And you know, when you're in Iraq, you walk around with a loaded, well, you walk around with a weapon and you have ammunition on you. Kid had lost it, and there was a tent full of CI folks, or counterintelligence folks, intel folks, some civilians that worked over there with us. Tent full of people. And this kid pulls out his 9 box of loads, and he's going to kill himself. And he's going to kill anyone who wants to stop him. Well, thankfully, he let almost everyone run out of that tent. And she came to my tent and all I heard was, he's got a gun. Oh, I jumped up, and not thinking, I ran into the other tent. And there he was, and he was just going off, screaming, yelling. I wasn't trained for that situation. And obviously, to try to calm him down. But what I tried to calm him down with, and what I talked to him about to get him to calm down, was what we're talking about today. And I told him there is more out there. And we talked about how life is a little bit more sometimes than we can handle. And I don't know what the outcome was. Well, the immediate outcome was when it all was said and done, I got his weapon from him. But he got to hear about what Jesus could do for him. Because honestly, I didn't. I've never been through training on how to talk someone out of not just killing themselves, but possibly killing me, because he let me know 2 or 3 times what he was going to do to me. And but there was no training for that. But God's word, and I hope that did have an impact on him. But the bottom line is, when you think that life's got you, I'm here to tell you life does. God does. And let Him help you. So, is there an Elijah complex? Or did Elijah have a complex? I don't know. I know that Elijah was frustrated. And he probably did feel alone. And the next set of scriptures lets us know and let Elijah know that he wasn't alone. I'm going to read verses 5 through 10. Is there any other comments? Okay. Verses 5 through 10.
I have one.
Yes, ma'am.
God and you have the majority.
That's right.
God, you have
That's
the
it.
majority.
And that's absolutely. Verses 5 through 10. In the same way, then, there has also come to be at the present time a remnant according to God's gracious choice. But if it is by grace, it is no longer on the basis of works. Otherwise, grace is no longer grace. What then? That which Israel is seeking for has not obtained, but those who were chosen obtained it, and the rest were hardened. Just as it is written, God gave them to a spirit of stupor, eyes to see not, and ears to hear not, down to this very day. And David says, let their table become a snare and a trap, and a stumbling block, and a retribution to them. Let their eyes be darkened to see not, and bend their backs forever. Okay. Paul's reiterating that it is by grace. It's not by works. There's nothing you can do to earn it. Nothing you can do to own it. It's a gift from God. But he goes and he talks about, I found it very interesting. Verse 7. That which Israel is seeking for has not obtained. What was Israel seeking? What were the Jews seeking? Say again? Deliverance. But they were also seeking what kind of kingdom? They wanted the times of David, the times of Solomon to come back. That's what they were wanting. That's what they were seeking, was that earthly kingdom. When, if you were a Jew, don't mess with me, because we're the top dog in the neighborhood. And they were. When David was king, when Solomon was king, I think Solomon had the greatest, he stretched the Jewish kingdom to its greatest, geographical, at least land mass-wise, to its greatest. And being a Jew back then was good. You won all the wars, the battles, and no one messed with you because, hey, God's on our side. Can't mess with me. And I think that that's what they were looking for. So, what does that tell us today? God gave us not just what we need to win the battles. God won the war. He won the war. And it wasn't what Mark Kelley was thinking of, or what Mark Kelley was wanting. It's what God gave, and it was his decision. And I think that that's the hang-up that a lot of the Jewish folks had. It wasn't, they weren't seeking, because Christ is talked about quite a bit in the Old Testament. It should not have been a surprise that he showed up when the prophets were basically foretelling of him coming. That's not what the Jewish folks wanted. It's not what they wanted to hear. It's not what they wanted to see. They wanted to have what was, I guess, enjoyed back in the times of David. So, what's that lesson tell us today? It's not what we want. It's not what we are looking for. And if we're looking for, and if we're going towards what you want out of life, how you want your life to be, and how you think it should be, and how you should get there, you may not find that path. You may not find those end results. Because it's not about you. And it's not about me. It's about God.
Amen.
And if we are not looking for what God has given us, or what God has presented to us, or the path that God gives us on how to walk through life, if that's not the path that we're looking down, but we're looking down our own path, it is the wrong path. And what's the end result? It is. You know, one of the things that I've told I tell people when I do have the opportunity to talk about God, one of the things that Brent and I share with our boys, because both of mine, boys that have been baptized, they were baptized a little bit later in life. I mean, they weren't. They were, I don't know, 20 and 18, 19-ish. But one of the things that I tell them, because I don't beat anyone over the head with the Bible anymore. I used to do that, and that was the wrong way to go about it. But one of the things that I told my boys, and I just continue to tell my youngest one, until the day that you decide to live for God, you are living for self. And that's not a scare tactic or anything, but I want to make sure, and I want us to know today, if you're living for self, you're not living for God. Whether you're baptized or not, if you are living for self and not for God, you're going down the wrong path. And we know what that path leads to. It does lead to death and destruction. It doesn't lead to a home in heaven with God. Getting back to the verses here, you're never alone. You might think you're alone. Elijah thought he was alone. But what was the reality of it? No. There's 7,000 more folks that haven't peeled the veil. There's 7,000 more folks around here that are struggling the same struggle that you're dealing with. They're fighting the same fight you're dealing with. You're not alone. So, the message for us today is, when life does get us down, when life does frustrate us, when we are overwhelmed or feel overwhelmed, you are not alone. Not just in that you're not struggling by yourself or with, I'm the only person that's struggling with alcoholism. I'm the only person struggling. You're not alone. Many of God's people are struggling with the same things, whether it's addiction or whatever it might be. You're not alone. But more importantly, not only are you not alone as far as with the struggle, with the fight, you're never alone if you got God. And that is the one thing that I shared with that young man. Because later we found out he was on some medicine that he wasn't taking and he never should have to begin with. But his whole thing was he was alone in the world. And I let him know he wasn't alone. And it wasn't just because I was eventually sitting next to him. But I let him know, no matter where you're at in life, you are not alone. But until you start that relationship, you're going to feel alone. I've said it before. I struggled. I don't know why. I struggled to pray. My mom, bless her heart, that woman prays every day, multiple times a day. And God has blessed her because she's got a very strong prayer life. I'm telling you right now, my mom will never feel alone because she talks to God every day. But the point I want to make is, whether you know someone that's got the same struggle or not, you are never alone when you got God. And God wants you to be there with Him, sharing with Him, because He will help you through. He will help you through. But again, Paul, he's wanting to really drive home that God did not leave the Jewish people. There is a statement that I like what he says here, and the author of the lesson, he's referring to the Jewish folks, to the Jewish people. He says, being the people of God had always required the nation to be a people of faith. For Jews to be saved, they needed to put their faith in God's Son and obey Him, just as Gentiles were to do. In Christ, God showed no partiality. But that first sentence is true. When they were under the Old Testament, it required them to still show faith to God. It still required them to be obedient to God. Nothing changed when Christ came. You still had to be obedient to God. And the hang-up that the Jewish folks had was, well, to be obedient to Christ means I'm leaving the kingdom that we're supposed to have, that we think we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be prominent in the world again. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Jews missed the boat. And still to this day, they missed, or they stopped following God because it wasn't in line with what they thought it should be, which was an earthly kingdom. But we do have a number of Jews that did. Paul was a Jew. Peter was a Jew. Most of the apostles were. I should say that most of the apostles were. Some of the apostles were Jewish. I know that some were Gentiles. The ones from that island. There's I thought there was two that came from that island of Crete, or not Crete, the other one. That one. Cyprus? I'll double check. I thought that there was two that, or let me do my homework on that. But the bottom line is, there was believing Jews in Christ, and there's believing Gentiles, and that's what it takes. Is we're still to be God's people. We have to be a people of faith. We have to be a people of obedience to faith in God. The last set of verses, Romans 11 through 15. I say then, they did not stumble so as to fall, did they? May it never be. But by their transgressions, salvation has come to the Gentiles to make them jealous. Now, if their transgressions be riches for the world, and their failure be riches for the Gentiles, how much more will their fulfillment be. But I am speaking to you who are Gentiles. Inasmuch then as I am an apostle of Gentiles, I magnify my ministry. If somehow I might move to jealousy my fellow countrymen to save some of them. For if their rejection be the reconciliation of the world, what will their acceptance be but life from the dead? And I'm going to stop right there. I had a hard time wrapping my head around this about, okay, we're going to make the Jews jealous by giving salvation to the Gentiles, and hopefully jealousy will bring the Jews to being saved. And I read that and I read it, and again, I've got on my computer multiple different commentaries, and I read what the 50-pound brain guys that are supposed to be able to interpret all this stuff, or at least have some educated ideas on what it means. I don't know, none of what I read impressed me. Jealousy is one of those things we're not supposed to have. I mean, it's actually it's in the list of bad. But I think the point that Paul's trying to make here is, hey, whatever it takes to get folks to Christ, I'm here. I'm part of it. I'm going to be a part of it. Whatever it takes to get folks to Christ. Now, what I like, or what kind of sums it up, I'm going to read a little bit more because this kind of ties it all in. I think it's verse, where am I at? I'm going to start with verse 16. And listen to what the word is saying. And if the first piece of dough be holy, the lump is also. And if the root be holy, the branches are too. But if some of the branches were broken off, and you, being a wild olive, were grafted in among them, and became partaker with them of the rich root of the olive tree, do not be arrogant toward the branches. But if you are arrogant, remember that it is not you who supports the root, but the root supports you. You will say then, branches were broken off so that I might be grafted in. We're talking about Jews and Gentiles. Quite right, they were broken off for their unbelief, but you stand by your faith. Do not be conceited, but fear. For if God did not spare the natural branches, neither will he spare you. Behold then the kindness and severity of God. To those who fell, severity, but to you, God's kindness. If you continue in his kindness, otherwise you will also be cut off. And they also, if they do not continue in their unbelief, will be grafted in. For God is able to graft them in again. For if you were cut off from what is by nature a wild olive tree, and were grafted contrary to nature into a cultivated olive tree, how much more shall these who are natural branches be grafted into their own olive tree? Did you get the message? I'm not botanist, study plants and stuff. I don't know how to graft anything. I know we had an orange tree in Florida that had 3 different kinds of oranges. So we had oranges year-round. We had a grapefruit tree that had white grapefruit and pink grapefruit trees, and somehow it was grafted. So I got the idea. You can have different stuff on the same tree supported by the same root system. But the bottom line here is, there's a tree, and some branches were cut off. They were cut off because of their disbelief, their unbelief, and other branches were grafted in. The branches that were cut off, they can be grafted in again. And the only little point I'd like to make of that is, if the branches were cut off, they're down on the ground, and they never get grafted in, what does that mean? A branch on the ground ends up dying. Leaves shrivel, wilt away, and it's dead wood. Like the only thing it's good for is campfires. So what does that say about once saved, always saved? It's a hard one to sell. If you read what Paul just said to the Romans, if you're cut off, you were once part of the tree. You were a branch. You got cut off for your unbelief. You can be grafted back in, but you might not. So, that's one of the places that I do like to go when I talk to some folks that do believe once saved, always saved. I have a hard time swallowing that pill when Paul says what he said here, and there's other places that we're not going to go into because that's what the lesson's about today. But just throwing that out there. And I'm going to, every time I start preparing this, I always think, I don't have enough material to cover 45 minutes, but I'm not even, I'm over halfway through. And we got 4 minutes. Chapter 12, verse 2. I'm going to hit the highlights, guys. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove that the will of God is that which is good and acceptable and perfect. I would love to go through verses 3 through 21, and again, listen to the words. So that is today's homework. I want you guys to go, between now and maybe when church starts or after church today, I want you guys to read verses 3 through 21 of chapter 12. Because that lets us know. And I have one verse 6. And since we have gifts that differ according to the grace given to us, let each exercise them accordingly. We're not all the same. We all look different. We think different. We feel different. We've got different interests. We've got different jobs. Bottom line is we are very, very different people. Not one of us is the same. Even identical twins have their own paths that they walk in life. But if you read through verse 21, whatever your uniqueness is, run with it. But run with it with God.
Amen.
Verse 21 says, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. And that right there, that's how we beat the struggle of life. That's how we beat the frustrations of life. And it's with good. He mentioned, the author of the lesson, he mentioned somewhere in here about that God allows evil to happen to show the betterment or the good that can come. And he's got a point. God's not the puppet master. God allows life to roll, and we roll with it. But God is always there for the good. He is the good in life. We need to find it. We need to find Him. Grab a hold of Him and never let go. Any closing comments, questions, or anything? I appreciate everyone's participation. We'll see y'all next week.